We're now well into the overtime portion, where the intellectual back and forth between Van Jones and Thomas Friedman is unfolding with a raw, breathless, and near frantic intensity. This is more than a debate, it's a high-speed collision of perspectives. A desperate effort from two sharp thinkers to chart a world they see coming apart. The discussion sparks instantly, not with the usual political bickering over polling, but with a deep, almost existential deliberation on compassion in the wake of mortality. Van Jones sets this new direction. You can hear his tone change, dropping the cable news analyst persona for something more personal, contemplative, and clearly heavy. He starts discussing his public and often vicious ideological conflicts with the late conservative activist Charlie Kirk. This isn't just a name drop. Jones and Kirk were ideological opposites. Total antagonists representing the far ends of the American political divide. Their arguments were pure spectacle, designed for maximum contrast. But then, Jones shares an astonishing private communication that completely recasts his viewpoint and fuels his current urgency. He reveals that just before Kirk's untimely death, Kirk had reached out with an unexpected, humane gesture, suggesting via text or email that they should try to model a healthier form of debate. To, as Kirk put it, disagree agreeably. Jones, with an earnestness that cuts through the panel's usual noise, explains that this specific phrase has become incredibly significant to him. It's not just a polite slogan. He views it as a possible cure for the toxic political environment he navigates daily. A principle he feels an ethical duty to champion. He then offers a major concession, one that clearly takes effort. He pointedly calls Kirk, a man whose politics he utterly rejected, a words not weapons guy. This, Jones argues, points to a mutual, if deeply hidden, commitment to the power of conversation. It was a shared dedication to winning an argument rather than destroying the person. Despite the immense, seemingly uncrossable gulf between their worldviews. While Jones is speaking, the camera focuses on Thomas Friedman, the veteran international correspondent and Pulitzer-winning author who has documented the transformation of nations. He isn't just hearing it, he's processing it, nodding with a grave, thoughtful look. You can practically see the rebuttal formulating in his head. The pragmatists, yes. But Friedman seems on the verge of countering that while such personal decency is admirable, even noble, it's a quaint luxury. He appears ready to posit that the non-stop, 24/7 political media ecosystem, a digital monster that must be fed constantly and rewards outrage, has zero tolerance, zero patience, and zero economic motivation for such quiet, respectful pauses. As the great chronicler of globalization's brutal speed, Friedman would be the first to say that modern public life demands that a person's entire legacy, their complete digital history, good, bad, ugly, and juvenile, is seized, analyzed, and turned into ammunition the instant they die. The first draft of history is no longer written by journalists, it's crowdsourced by a global mob in real time. And it doesn't wait for a eulogy. Yet Van Jones is visibly and deeply aggravated. His frustration isn't with Friedman, but with the entire political environment, and he specifically calls out people on his own progressive side. He paints a stark, brutal picture. They were throwing rocks at the corpse before it was even buried. He decries the grotesque, digital feeding frenzy he saw, the gleeful race to dig up and screenshot every poorly phrased, incendiary, or merely immature comment the 31-year-old had ever made. This profound lack of compassion, this refusal to pause, prompts an incredible moment of introspection from Jones. It's a calculated move, using his own vulnerability to make a broader point. He concedes with a self-aware laugh that if his own political thoughts from that same age were on record, I might have been saying things from the left side of Pluto. It's a vital confession, a warning to his own allies that if they enforce a standard of ideological perfection from birth, absolutely no one, not even their own icons, can pass that test. This honest, disarming confession ignites his impassioned, almost evangelical plea. He argues that a functional society must find a capacity for grace, a way to grant breathing room, even, and most importantly, to its opponents and foes. It's an elevated appeal for a basic, shared humanity, a request for empathy to come before political alignment. But this noble idea just lingers in the air. feeling fragile and out of place against the backdrop of the brutal, zero-sum political warfare they both participate in and analyze. And just like that, with the abrupt, jarring shock of a film's jump cut, Van Jones wrenches the entire conversation in a new direction. He executes a thematic handbrake turn that seems to materialize from thin air, yanking the discussion from the mire of human decency on Earth to the vast, unsettling mysteries of space. He turns to the panel, his curiosity genuine and almost childlike, and asks why the government is being so opaque about UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena. He carefully notes this is the new, more sanitized bureaucratic label for the much more loaded term, UFOs. He muses wryly that he doubts changing the letters will calm anyone's nerves, when the terrifying core problem remains. There are things flying in restricted airspace that the planet's most sophisticated armed forces cannot identify, cannot intercept, and cannot comprehend. He insists that the material he's been reviewing is deeply disturbing, far beyond the usual blurry, inconclusive videos on late-night TV. He's talking about shocking, high-level intelligence, the kind now being presented to Congress, concerning a 13-mile-long object that some reports suggest might be on a trajectory toward Earth. He describes its strange, physics-defying behavior, which contradicts all known models for comets or asteroids. It appears to be illuminated from its front, not by a tail of melting ice streaming behind it. It seems to be conducting a drive-by of every planet in our solar system, as if following a guided, intentional, and utterly baffling path. A survey mission? A probe? An artifact? The possibilities are more frightening than any single answer. This mesmerizing and frightening concept compels Jones to argue that the Pentagon, bound by new, specific, and surprisingly bipartisan legislation, is now legally required to disclose this weird stuff to the people. He contends passionately that this subject should be ripped from the fringes of internet forums and podcasting and given non-stop primetime news coverage. He wants to see 4-star generals compelled to sit before congressional committees, swear an oath, and state for the public record, "We don't know what we're seeing." He aggressively bats away the giggle factor, the knee-jerk cultural reflex to classify this serious inquiry with tinfoil hat conspiracies. In this, he is a perfect echo of Carl Sagan's core principle, in a cosmos with billions of galaxies, each holding billions of stars. Presuming we are alone is not just hubris, it's a statistical absurdity. In fact, Jones finishes, his tone a mix of intellectual wonder and real fear. It's starting to look very much like we are, at a minimum, being observed. He then quips, only half joking, that he just hopes they're only observing, and not about to land a ship on the White House lawn and have a stern Keanu Reeves-like figure inform us that humanity has proven too chaotic and self-destructive to be permitted to continue. Thomas Friedman, ever the realist, instantly seizes this opening. He grabs the concept of an existential menace and violently drags it from the cosmos back down to the ground. He doesn't mock Jones's cosmic dread, he masterfully repurposes it. He links the speculative, unknowable alien threat to two extremely knowable, tangible, and immediate terrestrial threats, climate change and artificial intelligence. Friedman states, with the authority of someone who has just interviewed the top experts, that both of these forces are speeding up far more rapidly than the public or even policymakers can grasp. He posits they are moving even faster than that comet thing. He offers terrifying proof of this acceleration by highlighting how our old vocabulary is failing us. Climate scientists, he notes, have abandoned the term extreme weather as insufficient. They've been forced to invent the horrifyingly clinical phrase super extremes to describe what is happening. 1.000-year floods that now occur every few years, atmospheric rivers, and wet bulb temperatures that will soon make entire regions of the planet physically unlivable for mammals. In the same way, AI specialists are no longer just talking about artificial intelligence, they are now bracing for the imminent civilization-breaking arrival of superintelligence, a dispassionate, godlike cognition whose priorities may not align with human survival. Friedman delivers a stark, chilling forecast. The coming 24 months will unleash more global instability, driven by these two interlocking forces, than any other period in modern history. This prompts a dark, Gallows humor aside from Jones, who, considering the political leadership, mutters that with Donald Trump in office, what could possibly go wrong? A grim joke recognizing that a volatile, erratic human factor is acting as an amplifier for these systemic crises. Friedman, however, steers the discussion away from that political jab and back to the stark economic facts of AI. He states, without ambiguity, that it is already eliminating jobs, and not the ones we were all told to prepare for. He explains it has blown past the routine, blue-collar manufacturing work, where a robot simply replaced a human on an assembly line. That's the story from decades ago. The new story is that AI is quickly and efficiently consuming skilled, white-collar professions, the very careers that were supposed to be the safe route. Legal aides, medical scanners, coders, financial analysts, graphic artists, and writers are all finding their work being done better, faster, and cheaper by algorithms. This, Friedman reveals, is the driver behind a stunning and profoundly worrying statistic. 92% of all capital investment in the first half of the year flowed only into AI. This is creating a bizarre, misleading economic picture, which Friedman labels a massive disinvestment in the rest of the tangible United States. This foundational rot, this hollowing out of the real economy, factories, infrastructure, R&D, small businesses, is completely hidden by the colossal, speculative, almost hysterical bubble in AI. The stock market, he contends, appears robust, but it isn't reflecting a balanced, healthy economy. It's reflecting a high-stakes casino, with every chip placed on a single, world-breaking technology. This brings Friedman to his most disturbing and memorable conclusion. Investors are long on AI, but they're short on America. They have placed more confidence in an inhuman, code-based intelligence than in the underlying stability, human capital, and future of the nation itself. This disturbing analysis gets an immediate and passionate cosign from Van Jones. He grabs Friedman's economic argument and uses it to spotlight the intense social friction it's already causing. He sketches a visceral portrait of the predicament facing the younger generation. A cohort that followed every rule society set for them. They didn't drop out, they stayed out of trouble. They pursued STEM degrees, and they burdened themselves with crippling six-figure loans to learn to code or practice law. And now, Jones says, they're graduating off a cliff into massive unemployment because the very careers they sacrificed for, the jobs that were promised as the secure future, are the first ones being rendered obsolete by the same AI that investors are so feverishly funding. This scenario, Jones cautions, his tone shifting from analysis to genuine alarm, is very bad for any country. He invokes a clear historical parallel, sounding almost like a historian, when your best-educated kids, the ones who did everything right and represent the nation's promise, are thrown onto the street with no future, crushing debt, and nothing to lose. They won't take that well. It's a thinly veiled but potent warning about the revolutionary, destabilizing power of a large, betrayed, and highly educated class. The segment quickly moves on, but not before Jones grimly jokes that the stand-up comic may be the only job left, because no one wants to hear jokes from a robot. Abruptly, the conversation lurches again, a violent, transition-less leap that perfectly mirrors the chaotic whiplash of the modern media landscape. The panel confronts the bewildering topic of whether the United States is engaged in a genuine, undeclared conflict with drug cartels, or if recent military operations, like attacking Venezuelan ships, are based solely on President Trump's claims. Van Jones responds with a deep, profound, and exhausted cynicism. He points to the sheer, overwhelming number of scandals and shattered norms that erupt every week. A flood the zone tactic that has successfully overloaded the public and the press, making it impossible to follow along, let alone enforce any accountability. He observes that an incident just last week that should have been a massive, presidency-defining scandal, the president commenting on an active legal case, a line no president used to do, was completely erased and forgotten, buried by 3 even bigger things in the last 5 days alone. One of those, he says, is this apparent, sudden, war with Venezuela. Jones flatly, and with a tone of utter absurdity, refutes the White House's entire justification. He clarifies, as if explaining to a small child, that the drugs aren't coming from Venezuela. Cocaine originates in Colombia and Peru. Fentanyl comes from Mexico. He states, with perfect deadpan timing, no one ever said, let's get some Venezuelan marching powder. The blatant ridiculousness of the lie is the entire point. He is left wondering why the president is suddenly insisting, against all facts, that Venezuela is the source. This forces Jones to concede that the administration's nonstop, brazen falsehoods have triggered an epistemological breakdown, a crisis of knowing, where it's impossible for anyone, even a professional analyst, to distinguish what's real, what's memorex. Is this a genuine, if stunningly inept, policy? Or, he wonders, is the entire military operation, the blowing up of ships, just a manufactured, wag the dog scenario to divert attention from something else, perhaps? He muses, the Epstein scandal? Thomas Friedman intervenes here, his voice grave. He underscores the deep, systemic peril of this truth decay. This, for Friedman, is the actual existential threat. He points out that so many of the invisible frameworks that society depends on, things people assumed were concrete laws, like the custom of not firing a Federal Reserve chair for political reasons, or a president divesting from their businesses, or the Justice Department's independence, were never laws at all. They were just norms. They were gentlemen's agreements, unwritten traditions of institutional respect and self-control. And once a leader proves that you can smash through those norms relentlessly, like a bull in a china shop, and suffer no repercussions, it is really hard to get them back. Pulling from his deep well of experience as a foreign correspondent, Friedman offers a chilling, first-person historical parallel. He states that he lived in Lebanon and watched a country unravel. He insists that it doesn't happen spectacularly, like in a disaster movie. It comes apart incrementally, day by day, norm by norm, lie by lie. The court system loses its independence. The media is bullied into silence. The currency stumbles and then collapses. Political allies get government contracts. People stop trusting their own neighbors. That, he heavily implies, is the road we are now walking. He is, in effect, warning that this intentional degradation of truth and tradition is a far more tangible, immediate, and self-inflicted doom than any mysterious object in the sky. The conversation, still reeling from Friedman's dire prognosis, makes its final pivot, shifting from the how-to of state failure to the pure spectacle of the culture war. The topic becomes the conservative outrage surrounding Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance. This fury, the panel notes, was ignited by the artist's previous critiques of ICE. Thomas Friedman, with a moment of refreshing candor, freely confesses his total ignorance on the subject. He jokes, with a classic boomer reference, that he is unacquainted with Mr. Bunny's work and would be more informed if it were Eddie Rabbit. It's a throwaway gag, but it highlights something deeper, his complete isolation from this massive sphere of modern culture. Van Jones, after smiling that he prefers the Easter Bunny, affirms that Bad Bunny isn't some obscure act, he is a global superstar. Arguably one of the biggest recording artists on the planet, Jones breaks down the backlash, asserting it clearly contains, at least some racial element. He recognizes that half the people performing their anger likely only know two facts about him: that the artist is brown, and that he dislikes ice-grabbing people. These two facts, Jones contends, should hardly disqualify someone from participating in a major American cultural event. Friedman cuts in, arguing that this whole, seemingly trivial debate exposes a much more profound and dangerous reality. We now live in completely different countries. It's not just that we get our news from different sources. He says, we inhabit completely different realities. He observes that the younger generation lionizes figures like Kai Cenat, streamers and online personalities that people in Jones's and Friedman's generation have literally never heard of. This is despite the fact that these new media stars command enormous viewership, audiences that often eclipse traditional cable news and even the Super Bowl itself. It is now possible for someone to be the most famous person in the world to one half of the population, and a total non-entity to the other half, the half that currently retains most of the political and financial control. Van Jones concludes the thought on Bad Bunny. explaining that this entire synthetic outrage demonstrates how conflict now propagates and metastasizes in our fractured information landscape. He guarantees that half of the people attacking the artist became overnight experts on his supposed awfulness simply because they saw the anger catch fire on a platform like TikTok. It's a perfect illustration of weaponized context collapse, where a single clip, a stray lyric, or an old tweet is ripped free of all its original meaning and nuance, and immediately repurposed as ammunition in the culture war. The very mention of that platform triggers Jones's last, proud, and somewhat defiant declaration. He announces that he has never used any of them, never Twitter, never Facebook, never Instagram, never TikTok, nor, he adds for good measure, lumping all modern temptations together, has he ever smoked a cigarette. He finishes the entire breathless segment with a humorous but provocative pledge. His personal life goal is to die saying he avoided all five. It's a final moment of levity, a personal effort to draw a boundary of sanity for himself. And yet, it serves as a perfect capstone, encapsulating the chaotic, unstable, and deeply frightening cocktail of personal ethics, political collapse, technological disruption, cultural fragmentation, and cosmic anxiety that he and Thomas Friedman had just spent the entire rapid-fire segment diagnosing.